Dobby really did make the best cookies. Harry couldn't believe that. He had not known that beforehand. Eventually, after enough cookies to make even Greg and Vince feel full, Dobby pulled Harry aside to whisper to him. Dobby thought Harry Potter ought to know that young Master Draco. Harry watched with huge eyes, dart about carefully. He what, Dobby? He messed himself, sir, Dobby breathed, staring down at his feet. Harry frowned. You mean made a mess in the kitchen? Did you want me to come down and clean it up? Dobby shook his head wildly. No, Harry Potter, sir. Master Draco did not make a mess. He messed himself. At Harry's confused look, Dobby pointed down to his own rump. Understanding hit Harry like a wall. Oh, he breathed out. He had another accident. Dobby nodded. Harry shrugged. It's okay, Dobby. He had the same problem yesterday. He was probably just too excited to be with you again. To remember to use the love. Dobby shook his head sadly. Or perhaps, Harry Potter, sir, it was something else. Harry eyed the elf worriedly. Something else? Like what? Dobby cowered. Dobby, you shouldn't tell Harry Potter, sir. Dobby, you don't work for the Malfoys anymore. Harry sounded frustrated. No one will beat you for speaking. Dobby nodded slowly. Harry Potter should really look for another reason, he whispered, then disappeared so fast Harry might have imagined that he appeared. Harry pondered Dobby's words for the rest of the day. He pushed them to the back of his head as he, Greg, and Vince took Draco down to Hogsmeade. But the thought was still in the back of his head. He pondered it as Draco twirled around in his new trousers. He pondered it as Draco showed off his new shirts and jumpers. He pondered it and thrustily purchased extra while Draco peered at the little boy boxers. Greg piled on heaps of clothing on Harry's lap. It was swirling around as he tugged Draco into the bookstore to purchase some real little boy books to read at night. He allowed Draco to choose some stories, and Draco came back with a large book of fairy tales, both Muggle and magical, and a book about a rabbit. Harry was surprised to see Draco cuddling the book to his chest. What you got there, puppet? He smiled. Draco blushed. Greg read the name for me. I wanted you to read it to me. Harry leaned in to catch a glimpse of the title. Guess how much I love you was bladinized across the cover, along with a picture of a large and small hare. How about we read it tonight? Harry ruffled the little boy's hair. Draco's face lit up and he nodded enthusiastically. Draco insisted that all the boys take a turn reading to him. Greg rolled his eyes, but Harry noticed that, and he allowed Draco to snuggle down to the crook of his arm as the deep voice I just got a splinter. Sorry, in the crook of his arm as the deep-voiced boy told the tale of the Swan Princess. Vince was a bit harder to convince. Harry thought maybe he just didn't want to do such a domestic chore. But then Vince sighed heavily and sat down with Draco. A slight flush on his face, he began reading, and Harry understood. Vince read about as well as Draco. It was painful to watch him suffer, stutter, and stumble through simple words. Harry found himself mouthing the words along slightly with the Slytherin. He glanced over at Greg and was startled to see sorrow, pain look on his face as he tried to immerse himself in the chess game he started with Harry.
He's too ashamed to let me help him.
Harry caught the barest whisper of sound from across the board.
Draco tries. He's really patient, but Vince gets frustrated easily. So easily that he just storms off before they've hardly begun.
Harry leaned closer. How has he managed to do his schoolwork?
Draco and I read chapters to him. He's not slow, he just has a hard time with certain words. He gets them all backwards.
Harry frowned and glanced up. Backwards? Has he ever been tested for dyslexia? Greg returned the frown.
What's that?
It's a muggle term. It's a reading disorder that causes you not to be able to read or write words in the correct order. Sometimes you can't even put the letters of a single word in the right order. Greg looked as though Harry had just handed him the crown jewel of England. It's quite common, Harry continued quietly. In Muggle schools, problems genuinely show up when the children are first learning to read. That's when they tend to test them for it. Greg still stared at Harry in awe. Harry was beginning to feel uncomfortable. What? He hissed. Don't wizards check for that? Greg shrugged, finally snapping out of his daze.
Don't know. They might in schools. Me and Vince were taught at home. Most purebloods are.
He added apologetically.
I don't know why Vince didn't recognise that he had a problem though.
Harry glanced back at Vince, who was struggling with yet another sentence. Draco smiled up at him and helped him sound it out. For one frightening moment, Harry thought that Vince might just yell at the small boy, but instead he just smiled back and pronounced the word correctly, moving on to the next. Dyslexia is generic. Harry turned back to Greg. The look on Greg's face was priceless. He was agape now, then confusion. Harry hasted to explain. It means he got it from someone in his family. Like how Draco's dad has blonde hair, so he has blonde hair. Or my dad had bad eyesight, so I had bad eyesight. Greg nodded slowly. So Vince's dad might not be able to read well either. And so he wouldn't know that Vince read that way too. Harry shrugged. Or he knew, and he was just too embarrassed about having it himself and passing it on to his son. Greg pulled a face.
Yeah,